So if an insurer is saying that they won't pay for something for you because they think it's not medically necessary, in New York State, the plan has to tell you specifically what criteria they use, what medical criteria they use, and how you didn't need it, why you didn't need it. You can request that criteria in writing and use that to draft your appeal.
That was Diane K. Spicer, supervising attorney at Community Health Advocates. And this is Epicenter NYC. We connect our communities to news, information, and each other. I'm your host, Amber Castillo. In the wake of the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, conversations about the healthcare industry have taken on a new level of urgency. One issue that keeps coming up is the frustration many people face when their insurance denies a claim or pre-authorization, even for procedures that doctors say are necessary. Today, I'm joined by Diane Spicer, supervising attorney at Community Health Advocates, to break down what you can do if this happens to you. From understanding the reasons behind denials to filing effective appeals, Diane walks us through a step-by-step guide to help you fight back. We'll also examine the larger landscape of health insurance, including why denial rates are so high, how private and public plans compare, and what rights you have as a patient in New York. Before we jump in, a quick message from our team.
Hi, I'm Mariana from the Epicenter NYC team, and I have an important health question. Have you experienced unexpected brain fog, fatigue, or mood changes? These may be symptoms of long COVID. Most people who have COVID-19 completely recover, but some have lasting symptoms and health problems. If you need more information about what this means, we can help. Long COVID is real. You can stay protected by keeping up to date with your vaccines. Don't let COVID derail your health. Schedule your appointment today. Send us a note at hello@epicenter-nyc.com or call or text us at 917-818-2690.
Now back to the show. Here's my conversation with Diane.
What are some of the common reasons that people get their insurance claims or pre-authorizations denied?
I mean, I would say the first thing is that a step-by-step guide is not necessarily a simple thing in the world of insurance because there's so many different kinds of insurance and they have different rules. And our program, Community Health Advocates, is an all-payer program, so we help anyone with any kind of insurance or even folks who don't have insurance access care and contest denials. The most common types of denials we see at Community Health Advocates are denials around utilization review. So when plans are saying that services, all types of plans, commercial plans, Medicare plans, Medicaid plans, are saying that services requested by a provider or a patient are not medically necessary. We also see an awful lot of billing and coding issues, right? Where the plan is saying the provider, for whatever reason, maybe they're out of network, maybe they just are new to the network, or for whatever reason are submitting the wrong billing codes or are not substantiating the billing codes they're sending, and an awful lot of out-of-network issues. I went out of network because I couldn't find a provider, but you have the type of plan that you're never allowed to go out of network unless you're having an emergency or you are protected from a balance bill under the No Surprises Act. And then we get an awful lot of just questions that may not specifically be about a denial that a consumer received in their hand, but a future denial, a bill, right? Consumers get bills all the time or things that they think are bills, EOBs, right? So we get an awful lot of just information about what the piece of paper that your insurer sent you is, what it means, what you should do with it, and, whether or not you have the potential for bills upcoming and whether or not you can access care upcoming because of what that piece of paper says.
Now, because of the current news cycle and, raising concerns around like maybe some of the nefarious practices of all these insurance claim denials, what I'm hearing you say in terms of some common reasons, like some of them are just maybe some things around like the consumer not knowing they couldn't use someone out of network based on their plan. So just maybe there's some preventative steps in terms of just making sure those basics, like you know what is actually covered.
Use your insurance. Absolutely. And really importantly, consumers, when they get enrolled in health insurance, they get a member handbook. It explains to them the basic rules of the kind of health insurance they have. What are their timeframes for appealing a denial? Whether or not they have out-of-network benefits, how to submit a claim or to have a provider submit a claim. So there's a lot of kind of education you can do around using your health insurance properly. And then, of course, there are just plain claim denials that are erroneous, right? There certainly are just claim denials that are, their plans are asking for different codes or different exhaustive kinds of information, right? And there's a whole legally mandated, statutorily mandated appeals process that plans are subject to, either federally regulated or state regulated or Medicare plans. They all have appeal timeframes and information that the plan is required to provide to consumers upon request. And there's a bunch of, I can give like detailed advice on, and we give every day, detailed advice on how folks can fight those denials and contest claims. And we also help folks do that.
Once someone opens up their mail and see they received a denial notice from their insurance, what's the first step they should do, given all of these reasons that you just listed could be possible? It could be an error. It could be like a billing code thing. It could be many different issues. Like, how should people first respond to them?
I think the first thing folks can do is, it depends what kind of document you get in the mail, but I think a great thing to do is call an advocate or call your provider, call your plan and ask them, do you know what this means? Can you help me through what this means? Because sometimes an EOB just says you're responsible for your cost sharing. Sometimes it says you're responsible for your, what you're responsible for is an error. And sometimes it'll say your plan is not paying at all because we think this is not medically necessary, which should follow with a detailed letter that says, this is the criteria we used. Here are your appeal rights. This is specifically the reason why we won't pay in your specific case. And that's where there are a lot of procedural rights that come in. So if an insurer is saying that they won't pay for something for you because they think it's not medically necessary, in New York State, the law says that the plan has to tell you specifically what criteria they use, what medical criteria they use. That criteria needs to be based on nationally recognized standards of care. And they have to tell you what specific criteria they used and how you didn't need it, why you didn't need it. You can request that criteria in writing, the kind of file or any notes that the plan has when they made that decision, and use that to draft your appeal.
Got it. And how long do people have to file the appeal?
It depends what kind of health insurance they're in. So there's lots of different rules. It's usually 180 days from an EOB or first level appeal, and then 4 months from a final adverse determination on that appeal. So once you appeal internally, you have additional time to appeal, but it depends really on the plan you're in. It's different for Medicaid, self-insured, fully insured. Union plans sometimes have different rules. Medicare has different rules. So it's very specific to the consumer. Generally, 180 days for internal appeal.
Does any part of this process change whether it's an appeal for an insurance claim denial versus pre-authorization denial?
I mean, no, the timeframes can be different.
Okay.
It's normally 180 days from a pre-auth. So in Medicaid managed care, for example, once you get a pre-auth denial, it's called an IAD, an initial adverse determination. That timeframe is 60 days.
Are there certain important details that patients should include when writing an appeal letter? Or is that more, again, case-by-case basis and like working with the advocate or whoever is helping with that appeal letter?
Yeah, it is case-by-case basis, but certainly there's for appeals that are in regards to medical necessity, certainly engaging your doctor and really being specific about how your medical records prove that you meet the criteria that the plan used to make that decision.
And that's the best way patients can make a solid case for medical necessity, like having the doctor explain why in the appeal letter, or at least provide the medical records that show.
Right. That's absolutely right. If you can get the doctor to do both, that's great. I mean, you on your own can also get your own records, right? You have, under New York law, patients have the right to their medical records. So you can request your medical records, request the criteria and the file, like the information the plan used to make the decision, and then, compare those things and solicit the help of your doctor in order to prove that your specific medical condition meets that criteria, or that criteria is like left field.
Are there common pitfalls that in the cases you worked on that patients should avoid when appealing a letter?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is that patients tend to include a narrative about, I mean, I'm not sure how to put this lightly, but they include information that really doesn't have much to do with whether or not a treatment is medically necessary, right? And whether or not their medical circumstances meet the criteria. They assume that the person on the other end that is actually reading their appeal, and maybe we can pull at their heartstrings. That's not necessarily a thing when it comes to health insurance. I mean, that sounds quite brash, but you want to make sure that the reader is going to read what you're submitting, and that you get right to the point about why you meet the clinical criteria or why the clinical criteria is incorrect, and that you're substantiating it. The fact that you've been fighting with them for years about XYZ doesn't matter at all, right? Like, knowing how to focus on the medical, I think, is really important. And sometimes consumers will fill with a lot of backstory that doesn't necessarily get to the heart of, is this treatment medically necessary for you? And can you prove it with your medical records and supplement it with information from your provider?
If someone's internal appeal gets denied, what other options do they have, or does it stop there?
If your internal appeal gets denied and it's around medical necessity, you have that right to external appeal. And if it's administrative, after you've exhausted your internals, the only thing you can do is complain to the regulator if you really feel the plan has made a mistake.
Got it. So that's the point at which the Department of Financial Services comes into the process, only
if you file a complaint afterwards. Yeah.
Got it.
If you're alleging that, the health insurance plan did something really wrong and they did not recognize that and remedy it at internal appeal.
Got it. And then to conclude, is it possible in just one sentence, to make sure I understood everything, for you to go through the steps?
Yeah. So once you get an EOB or an initial adverse determination, you have a specific time frame, depending upon your insurance, to appeal. You can request the records, the information that the plan made their decision based on, from the plan. Of course, if it's about a medical necessity, your records from your provider, to establish why you meet the criteria that they're saying they use to make a decision. Then you have a specific time frame, normally 180 days or 60 days, in order to file that appeal.
And then if that appeal is denied, then you have extra steps.
Right. If that appeal is denied, you have 4 months from the final adverse determination to request an external appeal if your denial is about the medical necessity of a treatment. Normally, it depends on your insurance. You might have a second appeal right for administrative denials, depending upon your insurance. So you should read those denial notices carefully. I know they're super long, but at the end, it'll tell you these are your appeal rights, and that is a real important part.
Got it. And then during that first step, in which you're trying to process what the letter means, you had said to maybe try to work with an advocate or try to work with someone who knows.
Right. If you're at all confused about what the letter means, what it means for you in terms of your financial responsibility, or whether or not a service that you feel you need and your provider feels you need is going to be covered, you should definitely call an advocate and get help to walk you through that document so that you understand what it means and what the next steps are. Folks should also be aware of community health advocates in their communities, but also be aware of their rights and responsibilities as an insured person, right? There's a lot of good information in those member handbooks. They explain the appeals process the way it's supposed to be, where to send an appeal, where to send a request for information. So those resources are also good tools if you are savvy enough to understand them.
Got it. And your organization is obviously a good resource for that as well. And is there a place that we can hyperlink to that's easy for them to find those guidelines, or would those be in their their health insurance guides?
That's in their health insurance guides. It just depends on what kind of insurance. There's a whole nother set of timelines for Medicare, for example. So it just depends on, and for Medicaid, it's 60 days internal. So it just depends what kind of plan you have.
Got it.
But we have there's lots of information on appeals on our website, on the Community Health Advocates website.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Remember, a denial doesn't have to be the final word. You have the right to appeal, and many decisions can be overturned with persistence and the right approach. If you're facing a denial, take action. Review your insurance policy to understand the reason, gather relevant documents, including letters from your doctor, file an appeal, and if necessary, request an external review. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't have to go it alone. Reach out to advocacy organizations like Community Health Advocates, Community Service Society of New York, or Make the Road New York. These groups can provide free guidance and support to help you navigate the process. And if you're experiencing a claim denial, or if you have tips to share, drop us a note at hello@epicenter-nyc.com. That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting as we do our best to support our community. We couldn't do it without you. For more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at epicenter-nyc.com. Our intro music is All the Pretty Horses by Karavika. You can find more of their music on their website, linked to in our podcast description.